My Aunt Vivian handed me a plastic keychain shaped like the Eiffel Tower across the Christmas dinner table. It looked like something you would buy at a gas station for $5. My brother-in-law Kyle snickered, and my mother rolled her eyes in embarrassment. I smiled and said thank you, because unlike them, I understood the value of a gift regardless of the price. But then Aunt Vivian stopped stirring her tea and said loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. I did not buy you a keychain, Camille. I bought you the $450,000 penthouse apartment in the Legacy Tower. The keychain just came with the keys. My entire family froze. The smirk vanished from Kyle's face and my mother turned white as a sheet. That was the moment the power dynamic in my family shifted forever. But to understand why that silence was so satisfying, you need to know what happened 2 hours before that keychain hit the table. Before I tell you how I legally evicted my toxic family from my life, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to hide your success just to survive your own family. My name is Camille Carter, and I am 30 years old. To my family, I am just a dusty library archivist who barely makes rent. They have no idea that my job is actually curating rare books and antiquities for the wealthiest collectors in Chicago, or that my net worth is higher than all of theirs combined. Growing up in the south side of Chicago, I learned to keep my head down. But this Christmas, the disrespect reached a breaking point. The wind was howling outside, whipping snow against the windows of my mother's house, but the real chill was inside the dining room. I had spent 6 hours in the kitchen preparing a traditional soul food feast. Collard greens simmered with smoked turkey leg mac and cheese, made from scratch with 3 types of cheddar, and candied yams exactly the way my late father used to make them. My feet were throbbing and my apron was stained, but I felt a sense of pride. That pride evaporated the second I walked into the dining room carrying the turkey. Kyle, my younger sister Chantel's husband, was sitting at the head of the table. My father chair. The chair that had remained empty out of respect for 3 years since he passed away. Kyle was leaning back with his legs spread wide, looking like he owned the place. He was a tech entrepreneur, which was just a fancy way of saying he was unemployed and gambling with cryptocurrency. He looked up at me not to say thank you, but to critique. Finally, the help arrives, Kyle said, checking his smartwatch. We were about to order pizza, Camille. Some of us have schedules to keep. I took a deep breath and set the turkey down. Kyle, that is Dad's seat. Mom usually sits there, or we leave it empty. My mother, Patricia, walked in from the living room holding a glass of wine. Oh, stop it, Camille. Kyle is the man of the house now. He needs to sit at the head to carve the turkey. Your father would want a strong male presence at the table. I bit my tongue. My father would have wanted a man who actually had a job, not a leech who was secretly draining my mother's retirement fund. I watched in silence as Kyle stabbed the turkey, butchering the meat instead of slicing it. He looked at the spread of food I had cooked and wrinkled his nose. Is this all we have? Kyle asked, gesturing at the greens and yams with his fork. It is a bit heavy, isn't it? All this grease and carbs. I am trying to maintain my physique for the investors' meeting next week. I thought you would make something lighter, Camille. Maybe a kale salad or some grilled salmon. This is Christmas dinner, Kyle, I said, keeping my voice steady. This is what we have eaten for generations. Kyle laughed, a dry, condescending sound. Right. Soul food. Heart attack on a plate. I guess when you work at a library and sit all day, you do not worry about cholesterol. He shoved a spoonful of mac and cheese onto his plate, looking like he was doing me a huge favor. I went to the sideboard to grab the wine I had brought. It was a 2015 Cabernet Sauvignon, a modest bottle to the untrained eye, but I knew the vineyard owner personally. It was complex, rich, and worth about $300. I had decanted it earlier, hoping to share something nice with them. As I reached for the bottle, Kyle's hand shot out and stopped me. Whoa, easy there, Camille. Do not waste your $2 chuck on us. I brought the real stuff. He pulled a bottle of wine out of a gift bag. The label was shiny and gold with embossed letters that looked fancy, but I recognized the brand immediately. It was a mass-produced sugary wine that sold for $15 at the liquor store down the street. I insisted on bringing the wine, Kyle announced loudly, pouring a glass for my mother. Nothing but the best for you, Patricia. This is a reserve blend, very exclusive. My mother beamed, sipping the cheap wine like it was nectar. Oh, Kyle, you spoil us. This is delicious, much better than that vinegar Camille usually brings. I said nothing. I simply uncorked my bottle and poured myself a glass. Since all the crystal wine glasses were already taken by Kyle, Chantel, and Mom, I grabbed a simple water tumbler from the cabinet. Kyle saw this and snorted. Look at that babe, he said, nudging my sister Chantel. Your sister is drinking red wine out of a water glass. Classy. Chantel giggled, rubbing her pregnant belly. She was wearing a tight dress that showed off her baby bump and enough jewelry to sink a ship. Most of it was cubic zirconia, but she acted like it was diamonds. Don't be mean, Kyle, she said with zero sincerity. Camille doesn't know any better. They probably drink out of paper cups at the library break room. Kyle leaned forward, his eyes mocking. I am just saying, Camille. Presentation matters. I know you are on a budget and working a minimum wage government job, but you could at least try to elevate yourself. Buy some proper stemware. It is embarrassing to watch you drink like a sailor. I took a slow sip of my $300 wine from my water glass. The notes of dark cherry and oak hit my palate. It was exquisite, unlike the vinegar they were drinking. I prefer substance over style, Kyle, I said, looking him dead in the eye. Sometimes the most expensive things come in plain packages, and sometimes the shiniest things are just trash wrapped in foil. The room went quiet for a second. Kyle's eyes narrowed. Was that a dig, Camille? My mother clapped her hands nervously. Okay, let us open gifts, before the food gets cold. Chantel, you go first. We moved to the living room. This was always the hardest part of the night. The performance. Chantel sat in the center of the room, surrounded by bags. I sat on the ottoman in the corner, holding my single gift for Mom. Happy Christmas, Mommy, Chantel squealed, handing over a large orange box. I knew you needed this to match your coat. My mother gasped as she saw the orange box. The logo said, Hermes. My heart sank. I worked with authentic luxury goods every day. From where I was sitting, I could spot the fake stitching from a mile away. The logo was slightly off-center. The leather smelled like chemicals, not craftsmanship. It was a counterfeit likely bought online for $200. But my mother did not know that. She tore it open and pulled out the bag, screaming with delight. Oh my God. Chantel, is this a Birkin? It sure is, Chantel lied smoothly. Kyle and I had to pull some major strings to get it. There is a 2-year waiting list, you know, but for you, nothing is impossible. Kyle puffed out his chest. Cost a fortune, but you are worth it, Patricia. Just do not ask me the price, or Camille might faint. My mother hugged the fake bag to her chest, tears welling up in her eyes. You two are the best children a mother could ask for, so generous, so successful. Then she turned to me, her expression cooling instantly. Well, Camille, what did you bring? I stood up and handed her a rectangular package wrapped in simple brown paper. It did not look like much next to the bright orange box. My mother took it gingerly, as if it might be dirty. She ripped the paper off, revealing a thick leather-bound book. It was a Bible, but not just any Bible. It was a first-edition family Bible from the 1890s, restored by a master bookbinder in London. It had belonged to a prominent African-American church in Chicago that burned down 50 years ago. I had spent 6 months tracking it down and $5,000 to acquire it because I knew how much Mom loved church history. A book, she said flatly. Her disappointment was palpable. It is an antique, Mom, I explained softly. Look at the date on the title page. It is from 1892. It survived the Great Fire. I thought you would appreciate the history. My mother flipped through the yellowed pages and wrinkled her nose. It smells musty, Camille. Why would you give me something used? Kyle laughed loud and harsh. Used. That is classic. Chantel gives you a Birkin, and Camille gives you a dusty old book she probably swiped from the library donation bin. That is not true. I started to defend myself, but Chantel cut me off. It is okay, Camille. We know things are tight for you. You do not have to compete with us. It is just a little insulting, that is all. Mom deserves new things, not leftovers. My mother set the Bible down on the floor next to the pile of discarded wrapping paper. It was careless, disrespectful. She turned back to the fake purse stroking the plastic leather. It is fine, Camille, she said dismissively. I am sure you meant well. Just maybe next year, save up a little more so you can buy a gift that shows you actually care. Or ask Kyle for a loan if you are struggling that badly. I looked at the Bible lying on the floor. A piece of history treated like trash. Just like me. I looked at Kyle's smug face and Chantel's self-satisfied smirk. They were mocking me for being poor while sitting in a house that was drowning in debt surrounded by fake luxury. I felt a cold rage settling in my chest. It was not the hot, angry fire I used to feel. This was ice. This was clarity. That was when the doorbell rang. It was Aunt Vivian. She walked in shaking the snow off her coat, carrying nothing but a small envelope. She was the wild card of the family, the only one who saw through the facade. And she was about to drop a nuclear bomb on this little party. She sat down, poured herself a drink, and looked at me with a twinkle in her eye. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out the plastic keychain. Here you go, baby, she said, tossing it to me. Happy late birthday. Kyle saw the plastic Eiffel Tower and burst out laughing. A keychain? Seriously, Vivian? What is she going to unlock with that? Her bicycle lock. The whole table laughed. My mother shook her head. Even Aunt Vivian is going senile, she muttered. I picked up the keychain. It felt light in my hand, but as I looked closer, I saw the small silver key attached to the ring. It was stamped with a logo. The Legacy Tower. Aunt Vivian took a sip of her drink and silenced the room with one sentence. That is for the penthouse apartment, Camille. I paid cash. The laughter died instantly. And that is when the real dinner began. The doorbell rang, cutting through the thick tension of the dining room like a knife. I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. The air in the room was so stifling with the smell of Kyle's cheap cologne and my mother judgment that I felt like I was suffocating. I stood up to answer the door, but my mother waved her hand dismissively. Sit down, Camille, she snapped. You are not a maid, although you certainly dress like one. Kyle, get the door. It is probably Vivian. She is always late. Kyle groaned, pushing his chair back. Great. The crazy cat lady is here. I hope she did not bring another one of her dumpster dive casseroles. He walked to the foyer, and a moment later, Aunt Vivian swept into the room. She was wearing a faux fur coat that had seen better days and a hat with a peacock feather that bobbed when she walked. She brought with her a gust of cold Chicago wind and the scent of menthol cigarettes and peppermint. Aunt Vivian was my father's older sister and the black sheep of the family. My mother tolerated her only because she was family, but usually spent the entire time rolling her eyes at everything Vivian said. Merry Christmas, everyone, Vivian boomed, ignoring the icy stares. She walked straight over to me and kissed my cheek. Her skin was cold, but her smile was the warmest thing in that entire house. Hey, baby girl, you look tired. Are they working you to death at that library? I smiled, squeezing her hand. I am fine, Auntie. Just a long week. She sat down at the only empty spot, which was right next to me. Kyle returned to his seat at the head of the table, looking annoyed that his performance as the patriarch had been interrupted. You are late, Vivian, my mother said, tapping her manicured fingernails on the table. We were about to serve dessert. I hope you ate before you came because the turkey is cold. Vivian waved her off. I ate a sandwich in the car, Patricia. Do not worry about me. I just came to drop off a little something for the birthday girl. She turned to me. I know I missed your birthday last month, Camille. I was down in Florida dealing with some business. But I saw this and thought of you. She reached into her oversized purse and dug around for a moment. My mother exchanged a look with Chantel. It was a look of pity mixed with amusement. They expected nothing from Vivian. In their eyes, she was just a lonely spinster living on a fixed income in a crumbling apartment on the south side. Vivian pulled out a small crumpled gift bag and slid it across the table to me. I took it, feeling the eyes of everyone on me. I opened the bag and pulled out the object inside. It was a keychain. A plastic keychain shaped like the Eiffel Tower, painted in a garish metallic pink with glitter glued to the sides. It looked like something you would buy at a tourist trap or a gas station convenience store for $5. Maybe less. Silence filled the room for a heartbeat, and then Kyle snorted. He tried to cover it with a cough, but the laugh escaped. Chantel giggled, covering her mouth. "Oh, Aunt Viv. That is. That is unique." Kyle leaned forward, picking up his wineglass. "A keychain? Really, Vivian? Did you get that with a fill-up at the gas station? What is Camille supposed to do with that? Put her bike lock key on it." My mother sighed loudly, shaking her head. "Vivian, you really did not have to. We know money is tight for you, but giving junk is just embarrassing. Camille, give it back to her so she can return it." I gripped the plastic tower in my hand. The glitter felt rough against my skin. To them, it was trash. But to me, it was a gift from the only person in this room who actually loved me without conditions. "I love it, Auntie," I said, keeping my voice firm. "I have always wanted to go to Paris. Thank you." Kyle laughed louder this time, a cruel braying sound. "Paris? Yeah, right. On a library salary, the only Paris you are going to see is on a postcard. That keychain is the closest you will ever get, Camille. Face it." Vivian did not look at Kyle. She did not look at my mother. She was stirring her tea with a small silver spoon, her eyes fixed on the liquid swirling in the cup. She looked calm. Too calm. "Actually," she said, her voice cutting through Kyle's laughter like a razor blade, "I did not buy her a keychain." The room went quiet. Kyle's smirk faltered slightly. "What are you talking about?" "It is right there in her hand. A piece of plastic junk." Vivian stopped stirring. She placed the spoon on the saucer with a deliberate clink. She looked up, and for the first time I saw a hardness in her eyes that made her look exactly like my father. "The keychain was a freebie," she said, clearly enunciating every word. "It came with the purchase." Purchase of what, my mother asked. Frowning, Vivian pointed a long, bony finger at the keychain in my hand. "Look closer, Camille. There is a key on the ring." I looked down. I had been so focused on the tacky plastic tower that I had missed the small silver key tucked behind it. I separated it from the ring. It was heavy, solid, and stamped into the metal was a logo I recognized immediately. Two interlocking gold letters, L and T. "That is the key to Unit 21B at the Legacy Tower," Vivian announced. The silence that followed was heavy, absolute, and suffocating. The Legacy Tower was not just a building, it was the building. It was a gleaming glass needle in the heart of downtown Chicago where celebrities and CEOs lived. It was the kind of place where you had to pass a background check just to park your car in the garage. Kyle dropped his fork. It hit the china plate with a loud clatter that made everyone jump. "What did you say?" Kyle whispered, his face draining of color. "I bought the apartment," Vivian said, taking a casual sip of her tea. 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. It is fully furnished. I closed on it yesterday. Paid in cash. $450,000. She turned to me and smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "It is yours, baby. Happy birthday. The deed is in the mail." I sat there frozen. The silver key felt like it was burning a hole in my palm. $450,000. Aunt Vivian, who wore thrift store coats and drove a 20-year-old Buick, had just dropped $500,000 like it was pocket change. But the shock was quickly replaced by something else in the room. A shift in the atmosphere. The air grew thick with a sudden violent envy. My mother's jaw had dropped so low it looked painful. She stared at Vivian, and then at the key, and then at me. I expected her to smile. I expected her to say, "Congratulations, Camille," or, "Oh my God, Vivian, that is incredible." Instead, her face twisted, her eyes narrowed into slits of pure fury. "What?" she whispered. Her voice was trembling not with joy, but with rage. "I said it is hers," Vivian repeated calmly. "Camille needs a safe place, a place of her own." My mother slammed her hand onto the table, making the wine glasses jump. "Have you lost your mind, Vivian? $400,000 for her." She pointed a shaking finger at me as if I had committed a crime. "She is single," Patricia screamed. "She has no children. She works at a library. What does she need a luxury apartment for? She will probably just fill it with dusty books and cats." "Patricia." "Calm down," Vivian said, but my mother was past the point of reason. "No, I will not calm down. This is insane. Chantel is pregnant, Vivian. Pregnant with your grandnephew, the heir to this family. She and Kyle are living in a rental. They need space. They need security. If you had that kind of money hiding under your mattress, why in God's name would you give it to the selfish child instead of the one who actually needs it?" I felt like I had been slapped. My mother was shouting right in front of me, arguing that I did not deserve a home because I was not the one giving her a grandchild. Chantel, who had been stunned into silence, suddenly found her voice. Her eyes filled with greedy tears. "Mom is right, Aunt Viv. We have been looking for a house for months, but the market is so hard. We have a baby coming. Baby. Camille doesn't need 2 bedrooms. That is just wasteful." Kyle, who had been staring at the table, suddenly looked up. His eyes were wide and calculating, a predator spotting a wounded animal. He licked his lips. "Now hold on, everyone," Kyle said, putting on his fake business voice. "Let us not get emotional. Vivian, that is an incredibly generous gift. But maybe Patricia has a point about logistics." He turned to me, a smile plastering itself onto his face, a smile that did not reach his cold, dead eyes. "Camille, obviously you cannot afford the HOA fees on a place like that. The maintenance alone is probably more than your monthly salary. And property taxes. You would be bankrupt in a year." He turned back to Vivian. "Aunt Viv, maybe we should rethink the structure of this gift. If you put the deed in my name and Chantel's name, we can manage the asset. We can let Camille live in the second bedroom, as a tenant. That way the baby has a home and Camille is taken care of. It is the only logical solution." I watched them, my mother, my sister, and my brother-in-law, like vultures circling a carcass. They had not even congratulated me. Not 1 second of happiness. They had immediately moved to strip the meat from my bones. I looked at the key in my hand. Then I looked at Aunt Vivian. She was not saying anything. She was waiting. She was testing me. She wanted to see if I was the doormat they thought I was, or if I was the woman she raised me to be. I closed my fingers around the key, the metal bit into my skin sharp and real. "No," I said softly. My mother stopped screaming. Kyle stopped scheming. They all looked at me. "What did you say?" my mother hissed. I stood up. I picked up the plastic keychain and clipped the silver key onto it. The glittery Eiffel Tower swung back and forth, catching the light. I said no. I repeated, my voice stronger now, filling the room. "I am not signing anything over to Kyle. I am not renting a room from my sister. Aunt Vivian gave this to me. It is mine." Kyle laughed, but it sounded nervous this time. "Camille, be realistic. You cannot afford the elevator pass in a building like that. Do not be stupid." I looked at him. I thought about my bank account, which currently held more money than his failing crypto portfolio ever would. I thought about the 15% stake I secretly held in the very building he was drooling over. "I think I will manage, Kyle," I said. My mother stood up, her face purple with rage. "If you walk out that door with that key, Camille, do not expect to come back. You are stealing from your sister. You are stealing from this family. I looked at the woman who gave birth to me, the woman who valued a fake Hermes bag over her daughter's dignity. I grabbed my coat. I am not stealing anything, Mom, I said, walking toward the door. I am finally getting what I am worth. Come on, Aunt Vivian, let us go see my new view. I walked out into the cold, snowy night, but for the first time in my life, I did not feel the chill. I felt fire. And I knew this war was just beginning. The morning sun sliced through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my private office, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. To my family, I was a lowly library employee who stamped due dates on card catalogs. In reality, I was sitting in a 2,000-square-foot climate-controlled workspace in the heart of the financial district. My desk was made of reclaimed mahogany, and the book resting on it was a first edition of The Great Gatsby worth $20,000. I was in the middle of authenticating the signature on the title page when my phone began to vibrate against the wood. I did not need to look at the screen to know who it was. My mother had been calling every 15 minutes since 6 in the morning. I had let the first 10 calls go to voicemail, but I knew Patricia Carter. She was relentless. If I did not pick up soon, she would show up at the public library branch where she thought I worked and cause a scene. I sighed and slid my finger across the screen. I put the phone on speaker and set it down next to the $20,000 book. "Hello, Mother," I said, keeping my voice even. "Camille, thank God." Patricia's voice cracked with theatrical exhaustion. "I have been up all night, sick with worry. I barely slept a wink thinking about the mess you are in." I picked up my magnifying loupe and leaned over the book, examining the ink flow on the author's signature. "What mess is that, Mother? Do not play coy with me, Camille. The apartment, that ridiculous white elephant Vivian saddled you with. I was talking to Kyle until 3 in the morning and he is terrified for you. You have no idea what you are walking into. The property taxes alone will drown you. And the HOA fees." Kyle ran the numbers, "Camille. On your salary you will be bankrupt in 6 months. They will foreclose on you and ruin your credit score forever." I dipped my pen into the inkwell, preparing to sign the certificate of authenticity for my client in London. "I appreciate Kyle's concern," I said dryly. "But I have done the math. I can handle the fees." "You are being stubborn, Camille. You always were." My mother's voice shifted from worried to patronizing. "Look, we came up with a solution. A way to save you from yourself. Since Kyle is a businessman and understands real estate, he is willing to help manage the asset. All you need to do is sign a quit-claim deed adding Chantel's name to the title, just for safety." I paused, my pen hovering over the paper. "So the plan is to give Chantel half the house. Not give Camille, share. It is for your protection. If Chantel is on the deed, Kyle can legally intervene if you get behind on payments. He can leverage his credit to save the property. Plus, with the baby coming, they need a stable address for the registry. It makes sense. You take the second bedroom, and they take the master suite. You can split the utilities. It is a win-win." I almost laughed. It was a masterclass in manipulation. They wanted to steal a $500,000 asset and frame it as doing me a favor. "Mother," I said, calmly signing my name with a flourish on the certificate. "I am not adding Chantel to the deed. I am not adding Kyle to the deed. And I am certainly not letting them move into the master suite." The line went quiet for a second. The fake concern evaporated instantly, replaced by the cold, hard edge I knew so well. "Are you seriously being this selfish right now? After everything we have done for you? What have you done for me, Mother? Besides telling me I am a failure because I do not have a husband. I raised you." My mother screamed. "I put clothes on your back, and this is how you repay me. By hoarding a luxury apartment while your sister is living in a cramped rental with a baby on the way. Do you know how stressed she is? The doctor said stress is bad for the baby. If something happens to my grandchild, it will be on your hands, Camille." I set the pen down. The emotional blackmail was right on schedule. "Chantel and Kyle are adults," I said. "If they cannot afford a house, maybe Kyle should stop day trading cryptocurrency and get a job." How dare you? Kyle is an entrepreneur. He is building an empire. You are just jealous because you are alone and bitter. I looked around my office. I looked at the wall of rare manuscripts protected by bulletproof glass. I looked at the view of the Chicago skyline. I was building a legacy while Kyle was building a house of cards. I am hanging up now, Mother. I have work to do. Dawn, not you hang up on me, Camille Carter. My mother's voice rose to a shriek. If you do not sign those papers, you are dead to me. Do you hear me? You are choosing a building over your own flesh and blood. Do you want your nephew to be born under a bridge? Is that what you want? You want an innocent baby sleeping on concrete because his aunt is a greedy narcissist? The visual was so absurd I rolled my eyes. Kyle drove a leased BMW. They were not going to live under a bridge. They just felt entitled to live in a palace. Nobody is living under a bridge, Mother. Goodbye. I tapped the red icon ending the call. The silence that rushed back into the room was blissful. I took a sip of my espresso. My hand was steady. My heart rate was normal. Years ago, that conversation would have left me in tears. I would have felt guilty. I would have questioned myself. But today, I just felt tired. I picked up the certificate of authenticity I had just signed. It guaranteed that the book on my desk was the real deal. Genuine, valuable, unlike my family. My phone buzzed again. A text message this time. It was from Kyle. Pick up the phone, Camille. We need to talk about the logistics of the move-in. I already booked the movers for Saturday. Don't make this difficult. I stared at the screen. He had already booked movers. He was so confident that I would break. He thought I was just stalling. He had no idea that I had already called the building management at the Legacy Tower. I typed a reply but then deleted it. No. I would not warn them. If they wanted to show up with a moving truck, let them come. I turned my attention back to my work. I had a client flying in from Tokyo tomorrow to look at a Civil War-era map. That deal would net me another $50,000. I did not have time for Kyle Imaginary Empire. But as I organized my papers, a thought nagged at me. My mother desperation sounded real, not the concern for me that was fake, but the panic about their living situation. Why was she so terrified of them not getting this apartment? Why was Kyle so insistent on moving in immediately? I opened my laptop and pulled up the background check software I used for vetting high-end clients. I typed in Kyle name. Usually I respected privacy, but after that phone call, all bets were off. The results populated in seconds. I scanned the screen and my eyebrows shot up. Kyle was not just broke, he was drowning. Several maxed-out credit cards, a repossessed vehicle from 2 years ago. And then I saw it. A lien. There was a massive lien against a property, but not his property. I squinted at the address. It was my mother house. My heart stopped. My mother house was paid off years ago by my father life insurance. It should have been free and clear. But according to public records, there was a second mortgage taken out 6 months ago. A high-interest short-term loan. The borrower was Patricia Carter. The co-signer was Kyle. I sat back in my leather chair, the realization washing over me like ice water. They did not just want the apartment because it was fancy. They needed it. They had gambled my mother house on one of Kyle's schemes and they had lost. If they did not get my apartment to sell or leverage, they were going to lose everything. My mother screaming about the bridge suddenly made sense. She was projecting. She was the one facing the concrete. I looked at the phone again. She had called me selfish. She had tried to bully me into signing over my future to save them from their own stupidity. And she had not told me the truth. She had not asked for help. She had tried to steal it. I closed the laptop. The game had just changed. They were not just greedy. They were desperate. And desperate people were dangerous. I needed to get to the Legacy Tower. I needed to see what they were doing to my property. And I needed to prepare for war. The lobby of the Legacy Tower was usually a sanctuary of silence and polished marble. It smelled of white tea and old money. I walked past the concierge desk nodding at George, who gave me a strange look. It was a look of confusion mixed with pity. I did not stop to ask him why. I just wanted to get to my apartment, my sanctuary, and verify that the deed transfer had gone through smoothly. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the 21st floor. My heart was beating a little faster than usual. This was the first time I was entering the apartment as the sole owner. Aunt Vivian had given me the keys, but legally and emotionally, it still felt like a dream. I imagined spending the evening measuring the windows for curtains and maybe ordering a pizza to eat on the floor while looking at the city lights. But as the elevator doors slid open, the dream shattered. I could hear the music before I even stepped into the hallway. It was loud, thumping bass vibrating through the expensive carpet runners. It was not the kind of music the residents of the Legacy Tower played. It sounded like a nightclub at 2 in the morning. I walked down the hall, my stomach twisting into a knot. The noise was coming from Unit 21B, my unit. I reached the door and punched in the access code Aunt Vivian had given me. The keypad flashed red. I tried again. Red. Access denied. Someone had changed the code. I felt a flash of panic followed immediately by a surge of cold anger. I reached into my purse and pulled out the plastic Eiffel Tower keychain. Aunt Vivian had told me the silver key was a master override for the unit meant for emergencies when the electronics failed. I jammed the key into the lock and turned it. The mechanism clicked and the heavy door swung open. The smell hit me first. Pepperoni pizza, stale beer, and cheap perfume. I stepped inside and the sight that greeted me made my blood boil. My pristine living room with its floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furniture looked like a construction zone. There were blue painter tape lines all over the hardwood floors. Furniture had been shoved haphazardly into corners. And standing in the middle of the room were Kyle and Chantel. Kyle was holding a sledgehammer. Chantel was holding a glass of champagne, pointing at the wall that separated the living room from the second bedroom. No, babe, Chantel was shouting over the music. That wall has to go. I need natural light for my beauty tutorials. If we knock that down, I can set up my ring light right there facing the lake. Kyle nodded, tapping the wall with the hammer. Yeah, it is probably not load-bearing. We can take it out this afternoon. Open concept. It increases the property value by at least 10%. I walked over to the stereo system and yanked the power cord out of the wall. The silence that followed was sudden and violent. Kyle spun around, dropping the sledgehammer on my hardwood floor with a sickening thud. Chantel gasped, spilling champagne on her blouse. "What the hell?" Kyle shouted. "Oh, it is you." He did not look guilty. He did not look surprised. He looked annoyed, like I was the maid interrupting a private meeting. "Get out," I said. My voice was low, shaking with rage. "Get out of my apartment right now." Kyle rolled his eyes and picked up his beer from the coffee table. He took a slow sip, staring at me with that condescending smirk I hated so much. "Relax, Camille. You are so dramatic. We are just doing some upgrades." "Upgrades," I repeated, pointing at the sledgehammer. "You changed the locks. You broke into my house, and you are about to destroy a wall. That is not an upgrade, Kyle. That is a felony." Chantel stepped forward, resting a hand on her baby bump, her favorite shield. "Camille, stop being hysterical. We did not break in. We have keys." She held up a key card. "A duplicate key card. How did you get that?" I asked. Kyle stepped in, puffing out his chest. I explained the situation to the concierge downstairs. I told him that Aunt Vivian is getting old and confused. I showed him a power of attorney document signed by her authorizing me to manage her assets. My jaw dropped. "You forged Aunt Vivian's signature." Kyle waved his hand dismissively. "Forged is such an ugly word." I expedited the paperwork. "Vivian is family. She would want us to take care of things. Besides, you obviously do not know how to manage a property like this." He walked over to the wall they were planning to destroy and patted it affectionately. "Look, Camille, let me educate you on real estate. This layout is dated. It is too compartmentalized." Chantel needs a dedicated studio for her influencer career. If we open this up, we create a flow. When we sell this place in 6 months, we can split the profit. I stared at him. Sell it? Yeah, Kyle said as if it was obvious. You cannot afford to live here, Camille. We all know that. So I am going to flip it for you. We do the renovations. We sell it at the peak of the market. I take a 60% commission for the labor and management. Chantel takes 20% for the design consulting, and you get 20%. It is free money for you. You should be thanking me. He was talking about selling my home, my gift, and giving me 20% of my own property. The audacity was breathtaking. I am not selling, I said, stepping closer to him. And you are not knocking down any walls. This is not a flip project, Kyle. This is my home. Chantel groaned, throwing her head back. Oh my God, here we go again. The selfish act. Camille, do you have any idea how many followers I have? 3,000. I am a public figure. I need a professional space. You are just going to use this room to sleep and read books. It is a waste. She walked over to me and poked me in the chest with a manicured finger. Think about your nephew Camille. Do you want him to grow up in a rental while you sit here in a palace all alone? If you let us move in and run the business from here, we can all be rich. Why do you always have to stand in the way of our success? I looked at the blue tape on the floor marking the demolition zone. I looked at the pizza grease on the Italian leather sofa. They had been here for less than 2 hours, and they were already destroying it. I did not forge anything, Kyle said, moving closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. I am the man of this family, Camille. I make the decisions. Aunt Vivian is senile. Her signature is whatever I say it is. And right now, I say we are remodeling. So why do not you be a good little librarian and go fetch us some more pizza? We have work to do. He picked up the sledgehammer again and swung it lightly, testing the weight. It was a threat, unspoken but clear. He was telling me that he was stronger, that he was in charge, that my ownership was just a piece of paper that he could tear up just like he tore up my confidence for years. But he was wrong about one thing. He thought he was talking to Camille the librarian. He did not know he was talking to Camille Carter, the woman who secretly owned 15% of the building he was standing in. I looked at the sledgehammer, then I looked at Kyle. You are right, Kyle, I said softly. He smiled triumphantly. See? I knew you would see reason. You are right that this apartment needs a change, I continued, but it is not the walls that need to go. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I did not call the police. Not yet. I opened the building management app, the one only owners had access to, the one that connected directly to the private security detail. I tapped the emergency alert button. What are you doing? Chantel asked, narrowing her eyes. I am calling the trash removal service, I said, because there is some garbage in my living room that needs to be taken out immediately. Kyle laughed. You are funny, Camille. Real funny. Now move. I have a wall to crush. He pulled his arm back, preparing to swing the hammer into the drywall. Do it, I challenged him. Swing that hammer, Kyle. But just so you know, the security cameras in this unit record audio and video to the cloud. And I think the police will be very interested to see a video of you destroying property you do not own with a weapon. Kyle froze. He looked up at the ceiling and saw the small black dome in the corner. The red light was blinking. I had installed it this morning remotely. You are bluffing, he sneered. Try me, I said. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the hum of the refrigerator and the frantic beating of my own heart. Kyle's grip on the hammer tightened. His knuckles turned white. I saw the violence in his eyes, the urge to swing not at the wall, but at me. Then the elevator chimed. Heavy boots came running down the hall. Security is here, I said, and I do not think they are here to help you renovate. The two uniformed officers stepped into the apartment, and for a brief second I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I thought that justice had finally arrived. I thought that the badge and the gun, and the authority of the Chicago Police Department would override the entitlement of my brother-in-law. I stepped forward, my hands shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of the confrontation. "Officers," I said, keeping my voice calm and professional. "I am the owner of this unit. These two individuals have broken in, changed the locks, and are currently destroying my property. I want them removed, and I want to press charges for trespassing and criminal damage." Officer Miller. A tall man with a tired expression looked around the room. He saw the sledgehammer on the floor. He saw the hole in the drywall. And then he saw Chantel sitting on the sofa holding her pregnant belly and looking like a frightened doe. Kyle stepped forward immediately. He had completely transformed. The sneering arrogance was gone, replaced by the demeanor of a confused and concerned citizen. He extended his hand to the officer. "Officer, I am so sorry you were called out here. This is a huge misunderstanding. We are just doing some renovations for my wife aunt who owns the place. My sister-in-law here is going through a bit of a rough patch personally, and she is very emotional today." I felt the blood rush to my face. He was gaslighting me in front of the police. "That is a lie," I said, my voice rising. "I own this apartment. Aunt Vivian transferred the deed to me yesterday. They have no right to be here." Officer Miller looked at me and then back at Kyle. "Sir, do you have proof that you are authorized to be here?" "Absolutely," Kyle said. He walked over to his briefcase, which was sitting on the kitchen island. He opened it with a confident click and pulled out a crisp document. "Here is the power of attorney signed by Vivian Carter, authorizing me to manage all her assets, including real estate transactions and maintenance. And here is the work order for the renovation." He handed the papers to the officer. I stepped closer, trying to see them. "That is a forgery," I said. "Aunt Vivian would never sign that. She hates you, Kyle." The officer scanned the document. He looked at the signature. He looked at the notary stamp. To the untrained eye, it looked official. It looked legal. The officer said, handing the paper back to Kyle. "This document looks valid. It gives Mr. Miller here legal authority to manage the property." "But the deed," I insisted, pulling up the digital file on my phone. "The deed is in my name." The officer sighed. He looked at his partner, who was checking his watch. I see that there is a dispute here over ownership and authority. But you are showing me a digital file, and he is holding a notarized hard copy. And frankly, since you are all family, this falls under a civil dispute." "Civil dispute," I repeated, incredulous. "He broke into my house. He is smashing my walls. And he has paperwork saying he is allowed to do it," the officer said firmly. "Look, if you want to contest the power of attorney, you need to take it up with a judge. We cannot evict a pregnant woman and her husband based on a he said, she said situation, especially when he has paperwork." "But he forged it," I yelled, losing my composure. "Then prove it in court," the officer snapped. "Until then, keep the noise down. If we have to come back here for a disturbance, we are taking everyone in. Have a good day." They turned around. They actually turned around and walked out. I stood there stunned. I watched the heavy door close behind them. The click of the latch sounded like a prison cell closing. I had the truth on my side. I had the moral high ground. But the system did not care. The system saw a messy family drama and washed its hands of it. The silence that filled the room was heavy and suffocating. I stared at the door, willing the police to come back, willing them to see the truth. But they were gone. Behind me, I heard a sound, a low, dry chuckle. I turned around slowly. Kyle was standing there holding the forged document. He tapped it against his palm, a rhythmic, taunting sound. Chantel was giggling, sipping her champagne again, as if the threat had never existed. "You really thought that would work, didn't you?" Kyle said, shaking his head. "You thought you could just call the cops and they would drag me away in handcuffs." He took a step toward me. I held my ground, but every instinct in my body was screaming at me to run. He was not just a leech anymore. He was a predator who had just realized that the fence around the sheep pen was broken. Let me teach you a lesson about the real world, Camille Kyle said, his voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than any shout. He leaned in close enough that I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. You can have all the deeds and titles you want. You can have the truth. You can be right. But in this society, when a man like me wearing a suit stands next to a woman like you, looking angry and hysterical, who do you think they are going to believe? He gestured to his own face, his pale skin, and then pointed at me. I am a businessman in their eyes. You are just an angry black woman trying to cause drama. I speak their language, Camille. I have the complexion of authority. You have the complexion of a suspect. I felt tears stinging my eyes, not tears of sadness, but tears of pure, impotent rage. He was saying the quiet part out loud. He was weaponizing the very system that was supposed to protect me against me. He poked me in the shoulder hard. So here is what is going to happen. You are going to leave. You are going to go back to your little library job, and you are going to let the adults handle the business. Because if you call the cops again, I will show them the text messages where you threatened me. I will paint you as unstable. I will get a restraining order against you for my wife and my unborn child, and you will never step foot in this building again. He smiled a cruel, twisted smile. Do you understand me, Camille? I have the power here, not you. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had bullied me for years, who had leeched off my mother's retirement and was now trying to steal my future. He thought he had won. He thought he had played the ultimate card. He thought I was defeated because I was silent. But he did not know that silence is not always surrender. Sometimes silence is just the sound of a predator recalculating its strategy. I looked at the camera in the corner of the room. The red light was still blinking. It had recorded everything: the forgery, the confession, the threat. You are right, Kyle, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. The police cannot help me today. I picked up my purse. I smoothed out my coat. I looked at Chantel, who was avoiding my gaze, studying her fingernails. Enjoy the renovations, I said. I walked to the door. Kyle's laughter followed me down the hallway, echoing off the marble walls. Run along, little librarian, he called out. Don't forget to return your books on time. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, cutting off the sound of his laughter, I let out a breath. My hands were shaking. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something, but I did not. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I opened a secure app, the app that connected to my private server. I watched the video file from the living room camera upload to the cloud. Kyle was right about one thing. He had the complexion of authority in front of two tired patrol officers. But in front of a federal judge facing charges of wire fraud, grand larceny, and forgery, his complexion would not save him. He had played the race card. He had played the gender card. But he had forgotten that I held the trump card. I dialed a number. It was not the police. It was not my mother. Hello, a deep voice answered on the second ring. Mr. Sterling, I said, speaking to the head of the legal department at Sotheby, I need to retain your services immediately, and I need a forensic accountant. I found the leverage we need. I walked out of the Legacy Tower into the cold, biting wind of Chicago. The police had failed me. My family had betrayed me. But as I looked up at the steel and glass tower piercing the sky, I knew one thing for sure. Kyle thought he had won a battle. He did not realize he had just started a war that would leave him with absolutely nothing. The vibration of my phone against the mahogany desk sounded like a warning shot. I was sitting in my private office, overlooking the gray expanse of Lake Michigan, reviewing the appraisal for a 16th century map of Paris. The office was silent, the kind of expensive silence that only thick glass and high floors can provide. But the digital world was screaming. I looked down at the screen. My Instagram notifications were scrolling so fast they were a blur. One name kept popping up. Chantel. I tapped the app, and there she was. Live. The video quality was grainy, but the performance was high definition. Chantel was sitting in the front seat of Kyle leased BMW. She was wearing a thin sweater despite the freezing temperatures, and she had positioned the camera so her pregnant belly was the focal point. Her eyes were red and puffy. I knew my sister well enough to know that she had probably rubbed them with onion or just poked them to induce tears. But to the 3,000 people watching, she looked devastated. The title of the live stream was in all caps. Evil Sister Kicks Pregnant Woman Onto the Streets in Freezing Chicago. I leaned back in my leather chair and turned up the volume. I just do not know what to do anymore, Chantel sobbed, wiping a tear from her cheek. We went there today just to measure for the nursery. We wanted to surprise her. We wanted to make it a family home. And she just called the police. She called the police on her own sister, on her own nephew. She paused for effect, letting a sob rack her body. We have nowhere to go, guys. Our lease is up and we thought we had family support. But Camille is just so cold. She has this $500,000 penthouse that she got for free. For free. And she won't even let us sleep in the guest room. She said she would rather see us freeze than share her space. I watched as the comments rolled in. It was a digital lynch mob. One user wrote, "What a monster." Another said someone needs to find this Camille and teach her a lesson. And then the doxing began. Someone posted my full name. Someone else posted the address of the public library branch where they thought I worked. "Let us get her fired," one comment read. "If she does not have a heart, she does not deserve a job." My stomach churned. Not from fear, but from disgust. Chantel was weaponizing her pregnancy and playing the victim to strangers to destroy my reputation. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was rallying the court of public opinion because she knew she had lost in the court of law. My desk phone rang. It was the landline for the library branch I used as my cover. I had it forwarded to my cell. I picked it up. "Hello? Camille, is that you?" It was Sarah, the head librarian. Her voice sounded tight and nervous. "Camille, we are getting calls. Dozens of them. People are screaming at the circulation desk staff, saying we employ a child abuser. What is going on?" "It is a family misunderstanding, Sarah," I said, keeping my voice calm. "My sister is upset and she is lying on the internet." "Well, you need to fix it," Sarah snapped. "The board does not like bad publicity. If this continues, we might have to let you go until things settle down. We cannot have protesters at the library, Camille." I hung up the phone. It did not matter if I lost the library job. The salary was peanuts compared to what I made in a week trading antiquities. But it was the principle. Chantel was trying to burn down my life. She wanted me isolated, unemployed, and desperate so I would come crawling back to them begging for forgiveness. She wanted to break me. I stood up and walked to the window. Below me, the cars looked like toys moving through the slush. A younger version of me would have been crying right now. I would have been calling Mom, begging her to tell Chantel to stop. I would have been writing a defensive post on Facebook trying to explain my side. But I was not that girl anymore. I was a businesswoman. And in my world, you do not react to emotional outbursts. You analyze the data and you destroy the competition. I sat back down and opened my laptop. I did not open Facebook. I opened a secure browser. If they wanted a war, I would give them a war. But I would not fight with tears and live streams. I would fight with information. I typed in a command and pulled up the back end of the security system from my apartment. I saved the video of Kyle holding the sledgehammer and threatening me. That was my shield. But I needed a sword. I dialed a number I had not used in a year. "Vance Investigations." A gruff voice answered. "Mr. Vance." "It is Camille Carter," I said. "Camille." The voice softened. "I haven't heard from you since we authenticated that stolen manuscript. What do you need?" "I need a full financial forensic sweep," I said, my fingers flying across my keyboard as I transferred the retainer fee. "The subject is Kyle Miller. I need to know everything. Bank accounts, crypto wallets, offshore holdings, gambling debts. And I need to know who holds the lien on my mother house." "Consider it done," Vance said. "Give me an hour." I hung up and turned my attention back to the live stream. Chantel was still crying, but now she was holding up a Cash App handle. "If anyone wants to help us get a hotel tonight," she sniffled. "Anything helps. We just want the baby to be safe." I watched the donations pouring in. $5, $10, $20. People were sending money to a woman who was wearing diamond earrings and sitting in a BMW. It was a grift. A disgusting, manipulative grift. But as I watched, I noticed something. A notification popped up on Chantel's phone, which was visible on the screen because she was holding it so close. It was a text message from Kyle. "Keep it up, babe. We are almost at $2,000. That covers the interest payment for the shark." I froze. I hit pause on the video and zoomed in. The text was blurry but legible. The shark. Loan shark. My suspicions were confirmed. They were not raising money for a hotel. They were raising money to pay off a dangerous debt. Kyle had gotten himself into something deep, something that threatened his life, and now he was using his wife and unborn child as human shields to beg for cash. My phone buzzed again. An email from Vance. Subject: Kyle Miller Financials. Priority high. I opened the attachment. It was a sea of red. Maxed out credit cards. Defaulted loans. But then I saw the transfers. Large sum transfers going to an account in the Cayman Islands. And the name associated with the receiving account was not a bank. It was a shell company linked to an illegal online gambling syndicate. I scrolled down. And then I saw the most damning piece of evidence: the lien on my mother house. It wasn't a standard mortgage. It was a high-risk collateral loan signed by Patricia Carter and witnessed by Kyle Miller. But there was a third signature. I zoomed in. Camille Carter. My breath caught in my throat. I had never signed that document. They had forged my signature as a guarantor. They had put me on the hook for their debt without me even knowing. If they defaulted, the bank would not just take Mom's house. They would come for my assets. They would come for my savings. I felt a cold calm wash over me. The sadness was gone. The pity was gone. They had crossed the line from toxic family to criminal conspiracy. I picked up my phone and dialed Vance back. "Vance," I said, my voice steady as steel. "I need you to find out where Kyle is hosting his little victory party tonight." "He is at the apartment," Vance said. "The neighbors reported noise. He went back in after the police left." "Good," I said, closing my laptop. I stood up and walked to the closet in my office. I pulled out my coat, but then I paused. I reached further back and pulled out a garment bag. Inside was a suit I had bought in Milan. Sharp, tailored, intimidating. I took off my library cardigan. I took off the sensible shoes. I dressed slowly, deliberately. I put on the suit. I put on the heels that clicked like gunshots on the pavement. I put on the diamond watch I usually kept in the safe. I was done hiding. I looked at the live stream one last time. Chantel was thanking her followers for their kindness, telling them that God would bless them. I closed the tab. "God might bless them," I whispered to the empty office, "but I am going to evict them." I grabbed the folder with the financial report. I grabbed my keys, and I walked out the door, ready to end this. The smell of old paper and dust had always been comforting to me. It was the scent of silence, the scent of order. The public library branch where I maintained my cover job was a sanctuary for people who wanted to escape the noise of the city. Homeless men sleeping in the corner, students stressing over exams, and elderly women reading romance novels. It was peaceful, until the automatic doors slid open and the circus arrived. I heard them before I saw them. It was a specific sound that I had grown up with. The aggressive clicking of low heels on linoleum and the rustle of stiff Sunday best fabrics. And then came the smell. A cloud of heavy floral perfume that smelled like lavender and judgment. I peeked through the gap in the bookshelf. My heart sank. It was not just my mother. It was the council. Patricia Carter was leading the charge, wearing a black hat with a veil that made her look like a grieving widow. Flanking her were Sister Bernice and Sister Ruth. In the hierarchy of our family church, these women were the enforcers. They controlled the choir, they controlled the charity funds, and they controlled the reputation of every family in the congregation. If the council came for you, it meant you were in spiritual trouble, or in my case, financial trouble. I tried to duck behind the biography section, but it was too late. Sister Bernice had eyes like a hawk. There she is, she boomed, her voice shattering the quiet of the library. There is the wayward child. Heads turned. The students looked up from their laptops. Sarah, my manager, came rushing out of her office looking terrified. "Excuse me, ladies," Sarah whispered, waving her hands. "You need to lower your voices. This is a library." My mother pushed past Sarah like she was a ghost. "We are here on the Lord business," she announced. "We are here to save a soul from the sin of greed." They cornered me in the aisle between history and religion. It was poetic, really. 3 women who claimed to represent God about to commit a sin in his name. "Hello, Mother," I said, keeping my voice low. "Sister Bernice. Sister Ruth. To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Do not use that tone with us," Camille, Sister Ruth snapped. She was a small woman with a mouth that looked like it had sucked on a lemon for 50 years. "We saw the video. We saw Chantel crying. We know what you did. You threw your own pregnant sister into the snow," Sister Bernice added, shaking her head. "Even the heathens do not treat their family with such cruelty." "What has happened to your heart, Camille? Has the devil hardened it?" I looked at them. I looked at their expensive hats and their designer handbags that they claimed were gifts from grateful parishioners. These were women who drove Cadillacs while the church roof leaked. "I am not sure what video you are talking about," I lied calmly. "But if Chantel is cold, she should buy a coat. I heard she has plenty of money for fake purses." My mother stepped forward. She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my sweater. "Stop it, Camille. Stop this act right now. The whole church is talking. They are praying for you. They are praying that you release the demon of avarice that has taken hold of you." She reached into her purse and pulled out a Bible, a small leather-bound one. She held it up like a weapon. "The good book says, 'Honor thy father and thy mother,'" she quoted, her eyes wide and manic. "It says that charity is the greatest virtue. How can you claim to be a Christian when you hoard a mansion while your kin suffers?" I pulled my arm away. "I do not have a mansion, Mother. I have an apartment. And Chantel is not suffering. She is living in a townhome that is perfectly fine. She just wants what is mine." "It is not yours," Sister Bernice hissed. "It was a gift from a confused old woman. A gift that should have gone to the head of the household, to the man who is raising the next generation." "So now it is about gender?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Because I am a woman, I do not deserve property. Is that what the church teaches now?" "It teaches submission," Sister Ruth said. "It teaches sacrifice. Jesus sacrificed everything. Can you not sacrifice a few rooms for the sake of a child?" They were closing in on me. The physical space was shrinking. They were using their bodies to intimidate me, just like they used to do when I was a teenager and wore a skirt that was an inch too short. They were trying to make me feel small, dirty. "Wrong." Sarah tried to intervene again. "Ladies, please. You are disturbing the patrons. I will have to call security." "Call them," my mother shouted, not looking away from me. "Let them come. Let them see a mother begging her daughter to do the right thing." She turned back to me, tears streaming down her face now. It was a masterclass in manipulation. "Camille, please. Just sign the papers. Give Kyle the authority. He will let you stay there. He promised. We just need the asset to be safe, to be in responsible hands. Do it for God. Do it for your father memory." The mention of my father made my blood run cold. My father hated these women. He called them the gossip gospel. He knew exactly who they were. I looked around. People were filming with their phones. Of course they were. This would be online in 10 minutes. Librarian attacked by church ladies. It was humiliating. And that was the point. They wanted to shame me into submission. They thought that if they embarrassed me enough, I would crumble just to make it stop. But I was not crumbling. I was calcifying. I looked at Sister Bernice, who was nodding along with my mother. I looked at Sister Ruth, who was clutching her pearls. and I looked at my mother, who was willing to destroy my dignity to save her own financial skin. I took a step back, creating space. I took a deep breath, inhaling the smell of old paper and ink. "You like to quote the Bible," I said, my voice clear and loud enough to be heard over their murmurs. "You like to pick and choose the verses that suit you." I walked over to the shelf next to me. It was the religion section. I did not need to pull a book. I knew the words by heart. "You talk about honor," I said, staring at my mother. "But you forget about truth." Then I turned to Sister Bernice. "You talk about charity, but you forget about theft." And then I delivered the blow. "And you all seem to have forgotten the 10 Commandments. Specifically, the 10th one." The women paused. They looked confused. Exodus 2017. I cited, my voice ringing out like a gavel. "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor house." I took a step toward them. "You are standing here in a place of learning, trying to bully me out of my own home. You are not here for God. You are here because you are envious. You are here because you cannot stand that the black sheep of the family has something the golden child does not." My mother's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Thou shalt not covet," I repeated harder this time. "You are coveting my apartment. You are coveting my peace. And you are using the Lord's name to cover up your own greed." Sister Bernice's face turned a deep shade of crimson. "How dare you, you insolent little—" "Get out," I said, cutting her off. I pointed to the door. "Get out of my library, get out of my face, and do not ever come back here with your hypocrisy. If you want to pray, pray for your own souls, because from where I am standing, they look very dark." The silence that followed was absolute. The students had stopped typing. The homeless men had woken up. Sarah was standing with her mouth open. My mother looked around. She saw the phones pointing at her. She saw the judgment in the eyes of the strangers. She realized that her performance had backfired. She was not the victim here. She was the aggressor. She straightened her hat. Her hands were shaking. "You will regret this, Camille," she whispered venomously. "You will die alone in that tower. And God will judge you." "I think he is judging right now, Mother," I replied. "And I like my odds better than yours." "Come, sisters," my mother said, spinning on her heel. "We are leaving. There is no spirit of the Lord in this place." They marched out as quickly as they had arrived. The click of their heels sounded less like an army and more like a retreat. As the automatic doors closed behind them, a slow applause started. It began with one student in the back and then spread. People were clapping. I did not bow. I did not smile. I felt sick. Sarah walked over to me. "Camille," she said softly, "I am so sorry. Are you okay?" I nodded, adjusting my cardigan. "I am fine, Sarah. I am sorry about the noise." "Take the rest of the day off," she said. "Go home." Home. The word tasted bitter. I went to the break room to get my coat. My hands were trembling as I buttoned it. They had tried to use my faith against me. They had tried to use my workplace against me. But they had made a fatal mistake. By coming here, by causing a scene, they had pushed me past the point of no return. I had been holding back. I had been trying to be strategic. But now I was going to be biblical. I pulled out my phone. I saw the text from Vance, the private investigator. He had the address of the loan shark. He had the proof of the forgery. And he had found something else. Something about Kyle and the church funds that Sister Bernice managed. I smiled. It was a cold, dangerous smile. They wanted to talk about commandments. Fine. I was about to teach them about Judgment Day. I sat in the driver's seat of my Mercedes G-Wagon parked 3 blocks away from the library. The heated leather seats were the only thing keeping the chill of the Chicago winter at bay. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. The confrontation with the church council had drained me, but it had also clarified something. They were not just mean. They were desperate. People do not humiliate themselves in public like that unless they are running out of time. My phone chimed on the dashboard mount. It was a secure email notification from Vance. The subject line was simple: K. Miller Financial's Priority Red. Priority Red meant imminent danger or criminal activity. I took a deep breath and opened the file. The document was 20 pages long, a comprehensive autopsy of a man who had been pretending to be a king while living like a pauper. I scrolled past the credit score, which was in the low 400s. I scrolled past the list of maxed-out credit cards from banks I had never even heard of. And then I stopped at the employment section. Kyle Miller. Occupation: unemployed. Last verified employment was 3 years ago as a junior sales associate at a used car dealership. He had been fired for altering odometers. I felt a cold laugh bubble up in my throat. A tech entrepreneur. A visionary building an empire. He was a fraud who had not earned a legitimate paycheck since the Obama administration. But the real horror was in the liabilities section. Vance had done a deep dive into the dark web and offshore accounts. Kyle had an addiction, but it was not just cryptocurrency. It was online high-stakes poker. He had been gambling with money he did not have on servers hosted in Russia and the Cayman Islands. I looked at the loss column. It was staggering. He had burned through my mother retirement fund. He had burned through the second mortgage on her house, and he was still in the hole. I scrolled to the bottom of the report where Vance had highlighted a figure in bright yellow. Total outstanding debt to unregulated private lenders: $450,000. I stared at the number. The world seemed to stop spinning. $450,000. The exact price Aunt Vivian had paid for my apartment. The math was too perfect. It was not a coincidence. It was a ransom note. I read the notes Vance had typed below the figure. Subject owes this amount to the Syndicate, a local organized crime group involved in loan sharking. Intercepted chatter indicates a deadline. Subject has been given 1 week to pay the principal in full or face physical consequences. Deadline is this Sunday. Sunday. That was 3 days away. Everything suddenly clicked into place. The desperation, the break-in, the rushed renovation. Kyle did not want to live in the Legacy Tower. He did not care about a nursery for the baby. He did not care about open-concept walls or natural light for Chantel videos. He wanted the title. He wanted his name on the deed so he could flip the property immediately. He would sell it for cash probably below market value, just to get the $450,000 he needed to save his own legs from being broken. He was going to sell my home out from under me to pay off a gambling debt to the mafia. And Chantel, did she know? I looked at the supplementary report on her. There were transfers from her personal account to Kyle. Small amounts. $50. $100. She was bleeding herself dry for him. But there was no evidence she knew about the sharks. She probably believed the lie that he was just having cash flow issues with his startup. She was a pawn. A pregnant pawn in a game that could get her killed. I looked out the window at the gray sky. Snow was starting to fall again. He was a drowning man, and drowning men will climb on top of anyone to get a breath of air, even their own family. My mother screaming at me in the library made sense now. Kyle must have told her some version of the truth. Maybe not the mafia part, but definitely the part about losing the house. She was terrified. She was backed into a corner. For a second, I felt a pang of pity. Just a second. But then I remembered the sledgehammer. I remembered the way he mocked my job. I remembered him calling me an angry black woman to the police. I remembered him forging my signature on the loan documents, putting me in the crosshairs of his debt. He was not just a victim of addiction. He was a predator. He was willing to destroy my life to save his own skin without a shred of remorse. If I went to the police with this report, they would arrest him for fraud. But that would take time. Investigations take months. By then, the loan sharks might have already made a move. Or worse, Kyle might disappear with whatever cash he could steal from my mother. No, I needed something faster. I needed something final. I needed to expose him in front of everyone. I needed to strip away his mask so completely that even my delusional denial could not save him. I looked at the date on the calendar. Saturday. The housewarming party. Kyle had sent out invites this morning. He was so confident that he would break me by then that he had invited his investors, aka the other scammers he hung out with, to celebrate his new acquisition. He wanted a show. He wanted to parade his victory in my apartment. I tapped my fingers on the steering wheel. He wants the apartment. Fine. I will give him the apartment. I picked up my phone and opened the text thread with my mother. My thumb hovered over the screen. I knew exactly what I needed to say. I needed to play the defeated daughter. The beaten dog, Mom, I typed. Mom, you win. The pressure is too much. I almost lost my job today because of the scene at the library. I cannot do this anymore. I waited a beat, letting the suspense build. Then I typed the second part. Tell Kyle I will sign the papers. I will transfer the deed to him and Chantel. Just please tell the church ladies to stop calling me. The response was immediate. 3 dancing dots appeared on the screen. Oh, thank God, Camille, my mother replied. You are finally seeing reason. We are saving you from a huge mistake. We will see you at the party on Saturday. Bring the deed and wear something nice. We are celebrating. Celebrating? I let out a short, humorless laugh. They were celebrating their survival. They thought they had successfully stolen $500,000 from the family scapegoat. I sent a text to Vance. I need the full video package of the gambling evidence prepared for broadcast, and get a copy of the forged loan document. I need it all on a thumb drive. Copy that, Vance replied. Be careful, Camille. These are dangerous men. I started the engine of the G-Wagon. The rumble of the engine felt powerful. I am not afraid of dangerous men, I whispered to myself. I deal with billionaires who would sell their own mothers for a tax break. Kyle is an amateur. I put the car in gear and pulled out into traffic. Kyle wanted a party. He wanted to show off his new kingdom. I would give him a party he would never forget. I would let him hold the pen. I would let him think he had won. And then when he was standing on the mountaintop thinking he was God, I would show everyone that he was just a criminal standing on a trapdoor. And I would be the one to pull the lever. The text message bubble turned blue on my screen. It was a simple message, a lie wrapped in truth. Mom, you win. The pressure is too much. I cannot handle the stress anymore. Tell Kyle I will sign the papers. Just make it stop. I stared at the words. To anyone else, it looked like surrender. It looked like a broken woman waving a white flag. But to me, it looked like bait. I placed the phone on the passenger seat of my G-Wagon and waited. I did not have to wait long. 3 miles away in the living room of my mother house, the atmosphere shifted instantly. I knew exactly what was happening because I had tapped into the baby monitor system Chantel had set up in the living room for testing. She wanted to be able to hear the baby from the kitchen, but right now she was broadcasting her own conspiracy. I adjusted the volume on my tablet and listened. Did she really say that? That was Chantel's voice, shrill and excited. Let me see the phone, Mom. Read it and weep, my mother voice crowed. She sounded like she had just won the lottery. I told you she would break. Camille acts tough, but deep down she is weak. She cannot handle conflict. The moment the church turned on her, she folded like a cheap lawn chair. There was a sound of movement. Heavy footsteps. That would be Kyle. Let me see that. Kyle's voice was rough, urgent. He read the text out loud, mumbling the words. I will sign the papers. I heard a loud slap like a hand hitting a table. Yes, Kyle shouted. Yes, finally. The witch came to her senses. He laughed, a sound of pure relief that bordered on mania. I knew she would cave. I knew it. She tried to play hardball with the big dogs and she got scared. Oh my God, Chantel squealed. We are getting the apartment. We are actually getting it. I can finally start my mommy vlog. I need to order that white sofa I saw on Pinterest, and we need to rip out that ugly carpet in the second bedroom. Hold your horses, babe, Kyle interrupted. His voice dropped lower, more serious. We are not decorating yet. First, we need to secure the asset. What do you mean secure it? Chantel asked, her voice losing some of its bounce. Aren't we moving in on Sunday? Yeah. Eventually, Kyle lied smoothly. But first, we need to handle the legal side. I need to get that deed in my hand before she changes her mind. Patricia, call her back. Tell her we are so proud of her. Tell her we love her. Whatever you have to do to get her to that party on Saturday with a pen in her hand. I watched the audio waveform on my tablet spike as my mother made the call. My phone on the passenger seat lit up. I let it ring. Once. Twice. Then I picked it up and put on my best crying voice. Hello, I whispered. Camille, honey. My mother voice was dripping with fake syrup. I just got your text. Oh, sweetheart, I am so relieved. You are doing the right thing. I know it was a hard decision, but God is smiling on you today. You are putting family first. I sniffled loudly. I just want the fighting to stop, Mom. I am tired. I know, baby, I know. The fighting stops now. We are a family again. Kyle is so happy. He wants to throw a big celebration on Saturday. A housewarming party. We will sign the papers there surrounded by love. Does that sound okay? Yes, Mom, I said. That sounds fine. Good girl, we will see you then. Wear something pretty, we love you. She hung up. On the tablet, I heard the disconnect tone. Then I heard my mother's true voice return. She is coming. She is bringing the deed. Get the champagne, Kyle shouted. The good stuff, not the trash we gave the guests. I heard the pop of a cork. I heard glasses clinking. They were toasting. They were drinking to my defeat. They were drinking to the theft of my property. Cheers to us, Kyle said. Cheers to the Carter family empire. And cheers to Camille for being the useful idiot we always knew she was. I sat in my car in the cold darkness and felt a smile spread across my face. A useful idiot? Is that what they thought? But then the conversation in the house took a turn. Babe, I need to make a few calls, Kyle said. To the movers and the lawyers, you guys keep celebrating. I will be right back. I heard a door close. The sound of the party muffled. Kyle had stepped into the garage or the back porch. I switched feeds on my tablet. I had not just tapped the baby monitor. Thanks to Vance, I had a clone of Kyle's SIM card. I could hear every call he made. I listened as the line rang. It was a different ringtone, harsh, mechanical. This is Marco. A deep, gravelly voice answered. Marco, it is Kyle. Kyle's voice was different now. It was not the arrogant tone he used with me. It was desperate pleading. Fast. Kyle. Marco sounded bored. It is Thursday, Kyle. You have 3 days. Do you have my money? I have something better, Marco. I have the asset. The deal is done. She agreed to sign over the title on Saturday. I do not want an apartment, Kyle. I want cash. 450 large, plus the VIG. I know, Kyle stammered. Listen, I already have a buyer lined up. A cash buyer. He is willing to take the unit for 350. Fast close. No inspection. 350, Marco repeated. Marco. The unit is worth 450. You are taking $100,000 loss. I do not care, Kyle snapped. I just need to pay you guys off. The 350 covers most of the principal. I can get the rest from my mother-in-law credit cards. I just need you to call off the dogs. So you are selling the place immediately? Marco asked. The second the ink is dry on Saturday, Kyle said. I have the papers drawn up. I get the title at 6 p.m. I sell it to your guy at 7 p.m. You get your money by Monday morning. And what about your wife, Marco asked. Where is she going to live? Kyle laughed. A cold, heartless sound. She can live with her mother for all I care. She does not know I am selling. She thinks we are moving in. Once I pay you guys off, I will tell her the market crashed or something. I will make up a lie. I am good at that. Just give me until Monday. There was a silence on the line. I held my breath. Monday morning, Kyle Marco said, If the money is not in the account by noon, we are not coming for the house. We are coming for your knees. Understood, Kyle said. Monday. Done. The line clicked dead. I sat back in my seat. The adrenaline was pumping through my veins like jet fuel. I had him. I had him on tape admitting to conspiracy to commit fraud. I had him admitting that he was going to sell the property immediately for a loss just to save his own skin. I had him admitting that he was going to leave his pregnant wife homeless and lie to her about it. He was not just stealing from me. He was betraying everyone. He was selling out Chantel. He was selling out my mother. He was burning the entire family to the ground to cover his gambling debts, and he was doing it all for $350,000. He was willing to lose $100,000 of equity just for speed. That was how desperate he was. I looked at the tablet. In the living room, my mother and Chantel were laughing. "I cannot believe we are going to live in the Legacy Tower," Chantel was saying. "I am going to paint the nursery pale yellow." "You deserve it, sweetie," my mother cooed. "You are the special one." Camille never appreciated nice things anyway. They had no idea. They were celebrating a victory that was actually their execution. I disconnected the feed. I had heard enough. I started the car. The engine roared to life, a beast waking up. Kyle wanted a quick sale. He wanted a cash buyer. Well, I knew a few cash buyers, but they weren't the kind Kyle was hoping for. I drove toward the city, my tires crunching on the fresh snow. Saturday was going to be spectacular. Kyle thought he was walking into a coronation. He thought he was going to sign a paper and become a king. He did not know that the pen I was going to hand him was not for a deed. It was for a confession. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were bright. My jaw was set. "I am coming for you, Kyle," I whispered. "And I am bringing the receipts." The countdown to the housewarming party had begun, and it was going to be a bloodbath. The bass from the Bluetooth speakers was vibrating the floorboards of the penthouse apartment. It was a deep, thumping rhythm that felt completely out of place in the refined elegance of the Legacy Tower. I stood in the hallway outside the elevator for a moment, listening to the noise. It sounded less like a housewarming party and more like a fraternity kegger. I adjusted the cuff of my jacket. I was not wearing my usual oversized beige cardigan or the sensible flats I wore to the library. Tonight, I was wearing a bespoke Tom Ford tuxedo suit in midnight blue. It was tailored to within an inch of its life, hugging my frame with a sharpness that commanded attention. On my wrist sat a Patek Philippe Nautilus watch with a rose gold face. It cost more than Kyle's entire life earnings, but tonight it was just a subtle accessory. Behind me stood Marcus and Andre. Two men the size of vending machines dressed in black suits with earpieces coiling down their necks. They were not just bodyguards, they were a statement. And standing next to me holding a leather briefcase was Mr. Sterling, the most ruthless contract lawyer in Chicago. "Ready, Mrs. Carter?" Sterling asked, his voice low and gravelly. I nodded. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of my own expensive perfume, instead of the nervous sweat I used to carry. "Let us go," I said. I pressed the call button. The elevator doors slid open with a soft hydraulic hiss. We stepped inside and I pressed the button for the penthouse. As we ascended, I visualized the scene upstairs. I knew exactly who was there. Kyle had invited his crew. A collection of low-level scammers, crypto bros, and guys who sold knockoff sneakers out of their trunks. He had also invited my mother's church friends and a few distant cousins. He wanted an audience. He wanted witnesses to his ascension. The elevator chimed as we reached the top floor. The doors opened directly into the foyer of the apartment. The smell hit me first. Cheap marijuana smoke mixed with expensive catering. The room was packed. People were spilling drinks on my hardwood floors. Someone was using a coaster as a frisbee. In the center of the room, holding court by the fireplace, was Kyle. He was wearing a suit that was too shiny and a size too small. He held a glass of champagne in one hand and a cigar in the other. He looked manic. His eyes were darting around the room, checking the time every 30 seconds. He was sweating despite the air conditioning. My mother Patricia was standing next to him, beaming like she had just been crowned queen. She was pointing out the view to Sister Bernice, acting as if she had personally built the skyline of Chicago. And then they saw me. The chatter died down slowly, spreading outward from the foyer like a ripple in a pond. People stopped drinking. The music seemed to fade into the background. I stepped out of the elevator. My heels clicked against the marble floor with a sound that was sharp and deliberate. Click, click, click. I did not walk with my head down. I did not hunch my shoulders. I walked with the stride of a woman who owned the building. Marcus and Andre fanned out behind me, crossing their arms and scanning the room with professional menace. Mr. Sterling stood by my side, his face unreadable. My mother dropped her wine glass. It shattered on the floor, spraying red wine onto her shoes, but she did not even notice. She was staring at me. She was staring at the suit, the hair which was styled in a sleek, powerful bob, the diamonds in my ears. "Camille," she whispered. Kyle spun around. His eyes went wide. For a second, I saw pure, unadulterated fear. He looked at the bodyguards. He looked at the lawyer. He saw the predator entering the room. But then his arrogance kicked in. The survival mechanism of a narcissist. He forced a smile onto his face. It was a grotesque thing, stretching his skin tight. "Well, well, well," Kyle boomed, opening his arms wide. "Look who decided to show up. The prodigal sister." He walked toward me, stepping over the broken glass. He stopped a few feet away, looking me up and down with a sneer. "Nice outfit, Camille," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Did you rent it for the night? Trying to look the part of a big shot, huh?" A few of his friends chuckled nervously. I did not smile. I did not blink. I just looked at him with cold, dead eyes. Kyle turned back to the crowd, gesturing at me like I was a circus exhibit. "You guys know Camille, right? My librarian sister-in-law. She probably blew her entire paycheck renting this suit and hiring these actors to stand behind her. She wants to save face. She is embarrassed that she is signing over the property to me, so she has to play dress-up." He laughed, a dry barking sound. "It is okay, Camille. We get it. You have pride. But you do not need the costume. We are family." My mother rushed forward, regaining her composure. She grabbed my arm, but this time she did not dig her nails in. She touched the fabric of my suit. Her fingers lingered on the silk lapel. She knew quality, and she knew this was not a rental. "Camille," my mother hissed under her breath, "what is this? Who are these men? You are scaring the guests." I pulled my arm away gently but firmly. "I am not here to scare anyone, Mother," I said, my voice smooth and projected. "I am here to conclude our business." Kyle clapped his hands, rubbing them together greedily. "Right. Business. The papers. Do you have the deed?" He looked past me to Mr. Sterling. "Is this the notary?" Kyle asked, pointing at my lawyer. "A bit dramatic bringing a suit on a Saturday, but whatever. Let us get this over with. I have people waiting." He was talking about the loan sharks. I checked my watch. He had less than an hour before he had to sell the unit to the cash buyer he had lined up. He was desperate to get my signature so he could flip the title. Mr. Sterling stepped forward. He did not extend his hand. He simply adjusted his glasses. "I am not a notary," Mr. Sterling said. His voice was like grinding stones. "I am Ms. Carter, personal counsel, and we are not here to sign a transfer deed." Kyle's smile faltered. "What? What do you mean? We had a deal." She sent the text. I looked at Kyle. I looked at Chantel, who was sitting on the sofa looking confused. She was rubbing her belly, staring at my watch. She was the only one in the room who seemed to realize that the watch cost more than the apartment she lived in. "We need to talk, Kyle," I said. "In private." "No," Kyle snapped. "No private talks. You sign the papers right here, in front of everyone. You promised Camille. Do not try to back out now." He was panicking. He needed the public pressure. He thought that if he made a scene, I would crumble again. "Sign it," he shouted, pointing at the kitchen island where a stack of documents lay waiting. "Sign the damn papers, Camille. Stop acting like you are someone important. You are a nobody. You are a broke, lonely librarian who got lucky with a gift from a crazy old lady. Now give it to the people who deserve it." The room was deadly silent. Even the music had been turned off. All eyes were on me. My mother looked terrified. Chantel looked worried. Kyle looked like a man on the edge of a cliff. I walked over to the kitchen island. I picked up the pen. Kyle let out a breath. He sagged with relief. He thought he had won. But I did not sign the paper. Instead, I picked up the remote control for the massive 80-inch television mounted on the wall. The television that was currently playing a slideshow of Chantel maternity photos. I turned to the crowd. "Kyle is right," I said. "I am a librarian." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. And as a librarian, I believe in the importance of records, of documentation, of truth. Kyle's face fell. "What are you doing?" I pointed the remote at the screen. "I brought a little housewarming gift of my own," I said. "I think you should all see it. Especially you, Mother." I pressed the button. The maternity photos disappeared. The screen went black for a second. And then a video began to play. It was grainy footage from a hidden camera. But the audio was crystal clear. It was Kyle's voice. And he was not talking about nurseries. The room gasped. And for the first time that night, Kyle stopped looking at his watch. He started looking at the door. But Marcus and Andre had already moved to block the exit. The party was over. The trial had begun. The Mont Blanc pen felt heavy in my hand. It was black and sleek with a gold tip. A gentleman pen. Kyle had probably stolen it from the jacket pocket of one of the investors he was trying to con. He shoved it toward me, his eyes manic and wide. "Sign it, Camille," he hissed. "Do it now." He held up his phone with his other hand. The ring light attached to the case was blindingly bright. He was live streaming. He was broadcasting this moment to his followers, to his creditors, and to the world. He wanted everyone to see the moment he broke me. "Say hi to the camera," Camille Kyle announced, his voice booming with fake charisma. "Everyone look. My sister-in-law is about to make the smartest decision of her life. She is signing over the deed to keep the property in the family. We are so proud of her for knowing her place." The comments were scrolling up the side of his screen. I could see them reflecting in his glasses. Laughing emojis, fire emojis, people cheering for the man who was about to rob a woman blind. My mother Patricia stood next to him, clutching her pearls. She looked nervous but hopeful. "Just sign it, baby," she whispered. "Then we can eat cake. Then everything will be okay." I looked down at the document on the marble island. It was a quitclaim deed. It would transfer all rights and ownership of Unit 21B to Kyle Miller and Chantel Miller for the sum of $1. $1. That was what they thought I was worth. I uncapped the pen. The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the distant wail of a siren somewhere in the city below. Kyle leaned in closer, the camera lens inches from my face. He wanted to catch the tear rolling down my cheek. He wanted the money shot. But I did not cry. I set the pen down on the counter. A sharp click that echoed in the quiet room. Kyle's smile twitched. "What are you doing?" "Pick it up." I reached past the pen. I reached past the deed. And I picked up the wireless microphone that was sitting next to the DJ booth Kyle had set up in the corner. I turned it on. A high-pitched feedback squeal cut through the air, making everyone wince. Kyle lowered his phone slightly. "Camille, stop playing games. Put the mic down." I walked to the center of the room. I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the frozen Lake Michigan. The city lights were twinkling behind me like diamonds. I looked like I was standing in the sky. I looked at the crowd. I saw the greed in their eyes. I saw the judgment. And I saw the confusion. "This building is beautiful, isn't it?" I said into the microphone. My voice was amplified, filling every corner of the penthouse. The Legacy Tower. One continued walking slowly back and forth. "It is a marvel of modern engineering, steel-reinforced concrete, triple-pane glass imported from Germany. It was built to withstand the harshest winters and the strongest winds." Kyle laughed nervously. Okay, thanks for the architecture lesson, Bill Nye. Now sign the paper. I ignored him. But the most interesting thing about this building is not the steel, I said. It is the bylaws, specifically the covenants regarding ownership and transfer of title. I turned to face Kyle directly. You see, Kyle? This unit has a very specific clause attached to it. It is called the developer right of first refusal. Kyle scoffed. He rolled his eyes at his friends. She is speaking gibberish. She is stalling. It means, I explained, my voice hardening, that no unit in this building can be sold or transferred without the express written permission of the primary investment group. And unfortunately for you, the primary investment group has flagged this transaction as fraudulent. Kyle's face turned red. You are lying. Aunt Vivian bought this place with cash. She owns it free and clear. She can give it to whoever she wants. And she gave it to you, and now you are giving it to me. That is how it works. He marched over to me and tried to grab the microphone. Marcus, my bodyguard, stepped in front of him. Kyle bounced off Marcus' chest like a rubber ball. Sit down, Kyle, I commanded. And turn your camera around. You are going to want to record this part. I looked at my mother. She was pale, her hands trembling. Mom, you always ask me why I spent so much time at the library. You thought I was shelving books for minimum wage. You were ashamed of me. I took a step closer to them. I wasn't shelving books. I was reading them. I was reading about market trends. I was reading about historical valuations. And I was building a business. I turned back to Kyle. Aunt Vivian did buy this apartment, Kyle. That part is true, but she did not buy it from the general market. She bought it from the developer. So what? Kyle screamed. Who cares? I care, I said softly, because she bought it from me. The room went dead silent. It was a silence so profound, you could hear the ice melting in the glasses. Kyle blinked. What? I am not just the owner of Unit 21B, I said. I am the silent partner in CC Holdings. We own 15% of the Legacy Tower. I am the secondary developer of this entire building. I gestured to the walls around us. I picked out this marble, Kyle. I chose these light fixtures. I approved the floor plan you want to destroy. And I approved the sale to Aunt Vivian because she is the only person in this family who treated me with respect. Kyle shook his head violently. No, that is impossible. You are broke. You drive a 10-year-old Honda. You wear sweaters from Goodwill. I drive a Honda to my mother house because I did not want to make you feel bad about your leased BMW, I said. It is called humility. You should try it sometime. I pulled a document from the inside pocket of my Tom Ford suit. I unfolded it. This is the original prospectus for the building. Look at the signature on the bottom line. I held it up. The name was clear. Camille Carter, managing partner. My mother let out a strangled sob. She looked at me as if I had grown a second head. You have money, she whispered. You have money, and you let us struggle. I did not let you struggle, Mother, I said. I paid off your car 2 years ago anonymously. I paid for Chantel braces when she was a teenager anonymously. I have been propping this family up from the shadows for a decade. I turned to Kyle, who was now sweating profusely. The phone in his hand was shaking. The comments on his live stream were going wild. Wait, she owns the building, someone wrote. OMG plot twist. But today I continued, the shadows are gone. I walked over to the kitchen island and picked up the quitclaim deed he wanted me to sign. You wanted me to transfer ownership to you. But here is the problem, Kyle. You cannot transfer what you do not own. And you certainly cannot sell a property that is currently under federal investigation for mortgage fraud. Kyle dropped his phone. It hit the floor with a crack, but it kept recording. It was filming his shoes. It was filming his collapse. Federal investigation, he whispered. Yes, I said. Because when you forged Aunt Vivian's signature on that power of attorney, you did not just commit a state crime. You tried to defraud a stakeholder in the building, me. And I take my investments very seriously. I looked at the crowd of scammers and church ladies. This party is over, I announced, and so is Kyle's lease on freedom. Kyle looked at the door. He looked at the window. He looked like a rat in a trap. You cannot do this, he stammered. I have people waiting. I have a buyer. I know about Marco. I know about the $350,000, and I know about your knees. Kyle's eyes bulged. How? Because I own the building, Kyle. I see everything. I pointed the remote at the 80-inch television screen that dominated the living room wall. Until a moment ago, it had been displaying a slideshow of Chantel maternity photos, a loop of soft focus images showing her and Kyle looking like the perfect happy couple. The guests had been cooing over them, remarking on how blessed the family was. Now the screen was black. A heavy, expectant darkness filled the room. Kyle took a step toward me, his hand outstretched. Give me the remote, Camille. This isn't funny. You are ruining the party. I did not flinch. I did not back down. I simply pressed the play button. The screen flickered to life. The audio boomed through the surround sound speakers, clear and crisp. It was not a professional video. It was footage taken from a cell phone sitting on a sticky bar table. The angle was slightly tilted, aimed up at Kyle's face. He was holding a whiskey sour, and his arm was draped around a woman who definitely was not my sister. She had long red hair and was wearing a dress that left very little to the imagination. The room gasped collectively. It was a sound like all the air being sucked out of the penthouse at once. On the screen, Kyle leaned in and kissed the woman on the neck. She giggled and pushed him away playfully. Babe, stop, she said, her voice tinny but audible. You said you were going to leave her months ago. When are we actually going to go to Cabo? I am tired of waiting. Kyle laughed on the video, taking a long swig of his drink. Relax, Misty. It is happening this weekend. I just have one last play to run. What play? The woman asked, running a finger down his tie. The mother-in-law play. Kyle slurred. God, you should see this old hag, Misty. Her name is Patricia. She thinks I am the Messiah or something. I told her I needed to secure the family legacy, and she literally handed me the keys to her house. I mortgaged it to the hilt. In the real world, my mother let out a sound that was half whimper, half scream. She brought her hands to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. On the screen, Kyle continued, oblivious to the destruction he was causing in the future. She is so stupid, it is almost sad. She thinks I am investing the money in tech. I blew it all on the tables in Macau last month, but who cares? Now her other daughter, the ugly one, just got gifted a luxury condo. He paused to laugh again, a cruel, mocking sound. The ugly one is going to sign it over to me on Saturday. She is a doormat. Once I get the title, I am flipping it immediately. Selling it for cash. And then what? Misty asked. And then Kyle said, grinning like a shark. And then I take the cash. I pick you up. And we disappear to Rio. No forwarding address. What about the pregnant wife? Misty asked. Kyle waved his hand dismissively. Chantel, please. That kid probably isn't even mine. And even if it is, I do not care. She is just dead weight. Let her mother take care of it. They deserve each other. I am walking away with $500,000 and a tan. The video ended. The screen went black again. For 3 seconds, there was absolute silence. It was the kind of silence you hear after a car crash before the screaming starts. I looked at Kyle. He was standing frozen in the middle of the room. His face was gray. He looked like a ghost. He opened his mouth to speak, to deny it, but no words came out. There was no spinning this. There was no explanation. It was him in high definition admitting to fraud, adultery, and abandonment. Then the screaming started. It did not come from Chantel. It came from my mother. Patricia Carter, the woman who had spent her entire life worrying about appearances, the woman who had criticized my every move, the woman who had worshipped the ground Kyle walked on, let out a wail of pure agony. My house, she screamed. My house! You mortgaged my house! She took a stumbling step toward him, her hands clutching at her chest. You said it was an investment. You said we were partners. You called me stupid. Kyle backed away, his hands raised. Patricia, listen. That video is deepfake. It is AI. Camille made it up. She is good with computers. You know I would never say that. Liar, my mother shrieked. Her knees buckled. She collapsed onto the marble floor, her fancy dress pooling around her. Sister Bernice and Sister Ruth rushed to her side, fanning her with paper plates, shouting for water. But the real danger was not on the floor. It was standing by the sofa. Chantel had not made a sound. She was staring at the blank screen, her hand resting on her stomach. The color had drained from her face, leaving her looking like a porcelain doll that was about to shatter. Dead weight, she whispered. Chantel, baby, Kyle said, turning his attention to her, his voice trembling. Do not believe it. That was just bar talk. I was drunk. I was just trying to impress that girl. I love you. We are having a family. Chantel looked at him. Her eyes were not the eyes of the golden child anymore. They were the eyes of a woman who had just watched her entire life burn to ash in 60 seconds. You are leaving me, she said, her voice rising. You were going to sell the apartment, steal the money, and leave me with a baby. No, 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 Kyle stammered, backing up until he hit the kitchen island. And you mortgaged Mom house, Chantel screamed. We are homeless. You made us homeless. Something inside Chantel snapped. The years of being the princess, the years of being protected from reality, the years of believing she was better than everyone else, all of it collided with the brutal truth. She let out a feral scream and launched herself across the room. It happened so fast Marcus and Andre barely had time to react. Chantel flew at Kyle, her fingernails extended like claws. She collided with him, scratching at his face, tearing at his shiny suit. You bastard! She screamed, raking her nails down his cheek, drawing blood. You liar! You thief! I gave you everything! Kyle tried to push her off, but she was fueled by the rage of a mother protecting her young, and a woman scorned. They crashed into the table holding the housewarming cake. The cake, a 3-tier monstrosity that said, Welcome home, flew into the air and splattered across the floor. Get off me, you crazy witch! Kyle yelled, shoving her hard. Chantel stumbled back, slipping on the frosting, but she did not stop. She grabbed a bottle of champagne from the counter and swung it. It missed his head by an inch, shattering against the granite countertop. Glass flew everywhere. The guests were screaming now, scrambling toward the elevator, trying to escape the chaos. People were holding up their phones, live streaming the brawl to the world. Stop it! I shouted, my voice cutting through the noise. Marcus, separate them. My bodyguards moved in. Marcus grabbed Kyle, pinning his arms behind his back. Andre gently restrained Chantel, who was sobbing uncontrollably, her mascara running down her face in black rivers. I stood in the center of the storm, untouched in my Tom Ford suit. I looked at the wreckage of the party. My mother was unconscious on the floor, being tended to by the church ladies. My sister was hysterical, covered in cake and champagne. My brother-in-law was bleeding and restrained. The apartment that was supposed to be their trophy was now their battlefield. Kyle struggled against Marcus' grip, spitting blood on my floor. This is your fault, Camille, he spat at me, his eyes wild with hate. You set me up. You ruined everything. I walked over to him. I stopped just out of spitting range. I looked down at him with zero sympathy. I did not ruin anything, Kyle, I said calmly. I just turned on the lights. You are the one who built a life that could not survive the glare. I turned to Mr. Sterling, my lawyer. Call the police, I said, and tell them to bring a paramedic for my mother. I looked at Chantel. She was slumped in Andre's arms, weeping brokenly. And tell them to bring a social worker, I added softly. Because I do not think this environment is safe for a child. The elevator chimed. But it wasn't guests leaving. It was the police arriving. The real police this time. Not the tired patrol officers from before, but the fraud division detectives I had contacted hours ago. Kyle saw the badges, and he stopped fighting. He slumped in Marcus' grip, his arrogance finally extinguished. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. Behind me, I heard the click of handcuffs. I heard my mother groaning as she woke up to a nightmare she had helped create. The party was definitely over, but the cleanup was just beginning. The elevator chimed, but it did not sound like a welcome bell. It sounded like a gavel striking a sounding block. The doors slid open and 4 men stepped out. These were not the tired patrol officers who had dismissed me earlier. These men wore dark suits that cost more than Kyle's car, and they carried the heavy air of federal authority. They were detectives from the Economic Crimes Unit, and they walked into the room with the precision of a SWAT team. Kyle saw them, and the color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse standing upright. He tried to take a step back, but he bumped into the kitchen island where the ruins of the celebration cake lay smashed. Kyle Miller, one of the detectives said. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a knife. Kyle tried to speak, but his voice cracked. "Who are you?" "I am Detective Stone," the man said, flashing a gold badge. "You are under arrest for wire fraud, bank fraud, grand larceny, and forgery." The words hung in the air. Fraud, larceny, forgery. They were heavy words. Uglier words. Kyle looked around the room frantically. He looked at his friends who were now staring at the floor, trying to make themselves invisible. He looked at Chantel, who was sobbing in the arms of my bodyguard. And then he looked at me. "This is a mistake," Kyle stammered, his hands shaking. "My sister-in-law is confused. This is a family dispute. We were just joking around." Detective Stone did not smile. He did not blink. He pulled a pair of steel handcuffs from his belt. The metal caught the light of the chandelier. "We have the bank records, Mr. Miller. We have the IP logs from the offshore gambling sites. And we have a sworn statement from the notary whose seal you stole. This is not a dispute. This is a felony. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." "No!" Kyle screamed. He tried to run. It was a pathetic attempt. He lunged toward the balcony door as if he could fly away like a superhero. But Marcus, my bodyguard, simply stuck out a foot. Kyle tripped and crashed face first onto the marble floor. Before he could scramble up, Detective Stone was on top of him. He yanked Kyle's arms back with professional force. The click of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was the loudest sound I had ever heard. Click, click, click. It was the sound of my freedom. Kyle was hauled to his feet. His nose was bleeding from the fall, and his expensive suit was covered in dust. The arrogance was gone. The swagger was gone. The man who had mocked my job and threatened my safety was replaced by a terrified child. "Camille," he shouted, his eyes locking onto mine. "Camille, tell them. Tell them I am a businessman. Tell them I can pay it back. I just need more time." I stood there in my Tom Ford suit, my arms crossed. I looked at him with the same disinterest I would show a book with a broken spine. "I cannot tell lies to the police, Kyle," I said calmly. "That would be obstruction of justice." "Please," Kyle begged, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the blood. "We are family. You cannot let them take me to jail. I will die in there. Look at Chantel. She is pregnant. Do it for the baby." I looked at Chantel. She was not looking at Kyle. She was looking at the handcuffs. She was looking at the reality of her life crumbling. "You should have thought about the baby before you gambled away her future," I said. "Officer, take him away." As the detectives dragged him toward the elevator, Kyle began to wail. It was a high-pitched keening sound that made the guests cover their ears. He was struggling, kicking his legs, screaming that he was innocent, screaming that it was all my fault. I watched him go. I watched the elevator doors close on his screaming face. And just like that, the monster under the bed was gone. But the nightmare was not over. I turned back to the room. The guests were frozen. Nobody knew what to do. They had come for a party and witnessed a funeral. And then I felt a hand on my leg. I looked down. My mother, Patricia Carter, was on the floor. She had crawled across the room on her hands and knees through the spilled champagne and the smashed cake. Her hat was askew and her eyes were wild with panic. She grabbed the hem of my trousers. "Camille," she sobbed. "Camille." Baby, please. I looked down at her. This was the woman who had told me I was unworthy, the woman who had slapped me, the woman who had chosen a thief over her own daughter. Get up, mother, I said, my voice cold. You are ruining my suit. She did not let go. She clung tighter, burying her face against my leg. You have to fix this, she wept. You have money. You said you own the building. You can pay them off. You can get Kyle a lawyer. We can fix this. I laughed. It was a short, bitter sound. Fix this, I repeated. You want me to use my money to save the man who stole yours. He is Chantel's husband. My mother pleaded, looking up at me. Her mascara was running down her cheeks, making her look like a tragic clown. We cannot let him go to prison. What will people say? What will the church say? I pulled my leg away, stepping back so she fell forward onto her hands. The church, I asked. You are worried about the church. Mother, you just watched a man get arrested for destroying your life, and your first concern is gossip. I crouched down so I was eye level with her. Listen to me closely, Mother. I am not spending a single penny on Kyle's defense. He can use a public defender. And as for the money he stole from you, my mother's eyes lit up with a flicker of hope. Can you get it back? No, I said. It is gone. He gambled it away. Your retirement fund is zero. Your savings are zero. My mother's face crumbled. But the house, she whispered. At least we have the house. I shook my head slowly. Kyle mortgaged the house, Mother. He took out a high-interest loan against the equity. And since he is going to prison and you have no income, the bank is going to foreclose. My mother gasped, clutching her chest. No, that is my home. Your father built that house. And you let a con artist sign it away, I said. You were so desperate to believe his lies because he told you what you wanted to hear. You wanted to believe you were rich. You wanted to believe Chantel was special. And because of that vanity, you lost everything. Please, Camille, she begged, reaching for my hand. Help us. You are the strong one. You always were. I know I was hard on you, but I did it to make you tough. And look, it worked. You are successful. You can save us. I looked at her hand reaching out to me. It was the same hand that had pushed me away for 30 years. I stood up, straightening my jacket. I am not going to save you, Mother, I said. I am going to save myself. I turned to Mr. Sterling. Have the security team clear the apartment, I said. Everyone out. Now. The guests scrambled for the door, terrified of me. They ran like rats, fleeing a sinking ship. My mother sat on the floor, weeping alone in the wreckage of her pride. Chantel sat on the sofa, staring blankly at the wall. I walked over to the window and looked out at the city lights. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. The weight of their expectations, the weight of their cruelty, it was all gone. They had tried to bury me. But they did not know I was a seed. And now, while they were facing the winter of their consequences, I was finally ready to bloom. The apartment was quiet now. The police had left, taking the chaos with them. The guests had fled like cockroaches when the lights turn on, leaving behind stained carpets and broken glass. The only sound left in the penthouse was the low hum of the refrigerator and the ragged breathing of my mother and sister. Patricia was sitting on the edge of the white sofa that she had so desperately wanted to own. She looked small. The imperious woman who had commanded the church council and terrorized my childhood was gone. In her place was a frightened old woman in a ruined dress. Chantel sat beside her, staring blankly at her hands, which were still shaking from the fight. Mr. Sterling. My lawyer cleared his throat. The sound was sharp and professional, cutting through the emotional fog. He walked over to the kitchen island and opened his briefcase. The click of the latches echoed in the silence like gunshots. We have one final matter to attend to, Ms. Carter Sterling said, sliding a thick stack of documents across the marble counter. My mother looked up. Her eyes were red and swollen. What matter? She whispered hoarsely. Kyle is gone. The party is over. Can we just go home, Camille? I just want to go home and sleep. I walked over to the island and rested my hand on the documents. The paper felt cool under my fingertips. Home. I repeated the word, testing its weight. That is the problem, Mother. You do not have a home to go to. Patricia frowned, confusion warring with her grief. What are you talking about? I am talking about the house. Your father's house. I picked up the top document. It was a notice of default from the bank. It was stamped in red ink. Kyle did not just borrow money from loan sharks, I said, keeping my voice devoid of pity. He needed capital to gamble. So he used the power of attorney you gave him to take out a second mortgage on your house. And then a third. He leveraged 110% of the equity. My mother shook her head violently. No, he said those were papers for the trust. He said he was protecting the asset. He lied, I said simply. And because he hasn't made a payment in 4 months, the bank initiated foreclosure proceedings last week. The eviction notice was scheduled to be posted on your door this Monday morning. The color drained from Patricia's face, leaving it a sickly shade of gray. Foreclosure. But that is impossible. That is my house. I have lived there for 40 years. It is the bank house now, I corrected her. And since Kyle is in federal custody and you have zero savings thanks to his gambling, you have no way to stop it. You are effectively homeless as of right now. Chantel let out a sob. But the baby. Where am I going to take the baby? I looked at my sister. The golden child. The one who had everything handed to her. I do not know, I said. Maybe you can stay with one of your 3,000 followers. Or maybe you can ask the church ladies for a room. Patricia stood up, her legs shaking. Camille, you cannot let this happen. You have money. We saw the papers. You own a percentage of this building. You are rich. You can pay off the bank. Please. It is your father's legacy. I looked at her. She was doing it again. Expecting me to fix the mess she had created. Expecting me to open my wallet and save her from the consequences of her own favoritism. I looked at Mr. Sterling. He nodded once. I can save the house, I said. My mother let out a breath of relief. Oh, thank God. Thank you, Camille. I knew you would not abandon us. I held up a hand, stopping her gratitude in its tracks. I am not paying off the mortgage for you, Mother. I am buying the debt. Patricia blinked. What? Mr. Sterling stepped forward. Mrs. Carter has arranged to purchase the distressed note from the bank. She is paying off the arrears and taking full ownership of the property. My mother looked confused. So, the house stays in the family. No, I said, stepping closer to her. The house belongs to me. My name will be on the deed. My name alone. Not yours, not Chantel. Mine. But we can still live there, right? Patricia asked, her voice trembling. I looked at the view of the city one last time. I thought about the years I had spent feeling unwelcome in that house. The years I was told to eat in the kitchen while they ate in the dining room. The years I was told I was a burden. Yes, I said. You can live there. But not as owners, and not as family. I slid a contract across the counter. This is a standard residential lease agreement, I said. If you want to stay in the house, you will sign this. You will be my tenants. I will be your landlord. Tenant? My mother whispered, as if the word was a curse. You will pay rent, I continued. Market rate. $2,500 a month, due on the 1st. If you are late by 5 days, eviction proceedings will begin immediately. 2,500, Chantel shrieked. Mom doesn't have that kind of money. Her pension is tiny. Then you will have to work. Chantel, I said, looking at her. You are young. You are able-bodied. And since you are not going to be an influencer anymore, I suggest you update your resume. The library is hiring a janitor. It pays minimum wage, but it is a start. My mother looked at the lease agreement with horror. Camille, please. This is humiliating. I am your mother. You cannot charge me rent to live in my own home. It is not your home, I snapped, my voice finally rising. It is my asset. And you are a liability. I tapped the paper with my finger. You spent my entire life telling me I was worthless. You spent my entire life telling me I should be more like Kyle. Well, now you have your wish. Kyle was a businessman. This is a business transaction. I leaned in close, my face inches from hers. You wanted me to be a property owner, didn't you, Mother? You wanted me to be successful in real estate. Well, here I am. I own the building we are standing in, and I own the house you sleep in. I am the biggest land baron you know. I shoved the pen into her hand. Now sign the lease, or get out. The shelters fill up quickly on Saturday nights. Patricia looked at the pen. She looked at Chantel, who was weeping softly. She looked at the luxurious apartment that she had thought would be her salvation. She realized then that the power had shifted completely. She was no longer the matriarch. She was a dependent. She was exactly what she had accused me of being for years, a burden. With a shaking hand, she took the pen. She did not read the terms. She did not argue. She bent over the marble counter and signed her name. Patricia Carter, tenant. She dropped the pen. It rolled across the counter and fell to the floor. There she whispered, "Are you happy now?" I picked up the lease and handed it to Mr. Sterling. He filed it away in his briefcase with a satisfying snap. I looked at my mother, broken and defeated. I looked at my sister, terrified of the future. "I am not happy, Mother," I said, my voice quiet and hollow. "I am just finished." I checked my Patek Philippe watch. "You have 1 hour to vacate my penthouse," I said. "My cleaning crew is coming at 9. I suggest you go home and start looking for jobs. Rent is due in 2 weeks." I turned my back on them. I walked toward the elevator, my heels clicking on the floor. "Camille," my mother called out, her voice cracking. "Do you hate us?" I stopped. I did not turn around. "I do not hate you," I said. "I just do not need you anymore. And that is what kills you, isn't it?" The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. As the doors closed, I saw them standing there, small and insignificant in the middle of my empire. I pressed the button for the lobby. As the car descended, I took a deep breath. The air felt lighter. The weight was gone. I walked out into the cold Chicago night. The wind bit at my face, but I did not feel the cold. I felt the warmth of the deed in my pocket. I took out the plastic Eiffel Tower keychain Aunt Vivian had given me. I ran my thumb over the cheap glitter. They had laughed at this keychain. They had called it trash. But in the end, it was the key to everything. I walked toward my G-Wagon, ready to start my real life. A life where I owed nothing to no one. A life where the only person I had to answer to was the woman in the mirror. And she was smiling. The snow was falling harder now, swirling against the glass like 1,000 tiny dancers. But inside Unit 45? It was warm and silent. I stood by the window of my real penthouse. Not Unit 21B on the 21st floor, where the chaos had happened, but the true crown jewel of the Legacy Tower, located on the 45th floor. This was my actual home, the one I had bought for myself 3 years ago under an LLC to keep my family from finding out. The apartment downstairs had just been a test, a bait, and they had swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. I walked over to my desk, which was made of polished obsidian. Sitting right in the center of the sleek black surface was an envelope. It was plain white and wrinkled. It had arrived this morning via certified mail. I did not need to open it to know what was inside. It was a check for $2,500. The first rent payment from my new tenants, my mother and my sister. I picked up the envelope, weighing it in my hand. It felt light, but the victory it represented was heavy. According to the report from Mr. Sterling, Chantel had gotten a job stocking shelves at a grocery store on the night shift. My mother was taking in sewing work from the neighbors. They were working, they were struggling, and for the first time in their lives, they were paying their own way. I set the envelope down and looked at the object sitting next to it. The plastic pink Eiffel Tower keychain. It looked ridiculous sitting there against the expensive decor. The glitter was peeling off the sides, and the plastic ring was cheap and flimsy. Aunt Vivian had bought it at a gas station for $5, just like Kyle had mocked. But as I ran my thumb over the rough edges, I realized it was the most valuable thing I owned. This cheap piece of plastic had done what thousands of dollars in therapy could never do. It had revealed the truth. It had acted as a prism separating the light of my family love from the darkness of their greed. It had saved me from a lifetime of being used. I picked it up and walked to the kitchen. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air. I poured myself a cup and walked out onto the balcony. The wind was biting, but I did not zip up my coat. I wanted to feel it. I wanted to feel everything. 1 month ago, I was the invisible daughter, the doormat, the bank account they tapped whenever they made a mistake. I was the librarian who wore old sweaters and kept her head down. Today, I was Camille Carter, managing partner, landlord, survivor. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from Aunt Vivian. "Coming over for dinner tonight. I am bringing the mac and cheese, and do not worry, I bought a new keychain for the guest room." I laughed, a real, genuine sound that echoed off the steel beams of the balcony. Aunt Vivian was the only one who had passed the test. She was the only one who knew about my success before the reveal, and she had kept my secret because she understood. She knew that money does not change people, it just unmasks them. I looked down at the city below. Somewhere in that grid of lights sat a dark, cold cell where Kyle Miller was currently sleeping. He was awaiting trial for federal fraud. The lawyer said he was looking at 10 to 15 years. He had called me once from the jail phone. I had not picked up. I would never pick up again. And somewhere else in a house that used to feel like a prison to me, my mother and sister were probably sitting in the kitchen eating leftovers and complaining about the rent. They were trapped in the reality they had created. But up here the air was thin and clean. I looked at the keychain one last time. I thought about throwing it off the balcony. I thought about watching it spiral down into the snow, burying the past forever. But I did not. I walked back inside and went to the wall by the door. There was a row of gold hooks for keys. I hung the cheap pink plastic tower right there next to the keys for my Mercedes and the security fob for the building. It belonged there. It was a trophy, a monument to the day I finally chose myself. I turned off the lights in the living room, leaving only the glow of the city to illuminate the space. I walked toward my bedroom, my footsteps soft on the plush carpet. I was alone. I had no husband. I had no children. And for the first time in 30 years, I had no family drama dragging me down. Some people might call it lonely. I took a sip of my coffee and smiled into the darkness. I call it freedom. And as I closed my eyes that night, I slept the deep, dreamless sleep of a woman who owes nothing to anyone. The keychain hung by the door, guarding my peace. It was cheap, it was tacky, and it was absolutely beautiful. This story serves as a powerful reminder that sharing DNA does not grant a license for abuse. Camille's journey illustrates that true power lies in self-respect and financial independence. For years, she allowed her generosity to be weaponized against her, but she ultimately learned that we teach people how to treat us. The narrative demonstrates that setting boundaries is essential for survival. When kindness is met with constant cruelty and exploitation, the healthiest choice is often to sever ties completely. Being alone is far better than being surrounded by people who only value you for what you provide. Hit the like button if you agree that your peace is more expensive than their approval. And subscribe to the channel if you are ready to start writing your own chapter of independence. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that it is okay to walk away from toxic family. Remember, you are the architect of your own life, and sometimes you have to evict the people who are just destroying the building. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next story.